This is 10x Recruiting, a podcast from Metaview. Let's get after it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10x Recruiting. And today we have a new segment for you called What We're Cooking. So Siadhal and I are going to show you what we've been cooking in the kitchen, specifically with like what's going on in Metaview, and then also broadly like what's going on in Claude Code and how you can apply those learnings to your own workflow. So for today's segment, make sure if you can, get to a computer, watch what we're about to show you because it's going to be dope because that's basically what me and Siadhal do. So Siadhal, what are you cooking on?
Got a bunch to show. To be honest, it's almost too much. I feel like we're cooking like crazy. I know. One thing you're gonna sort of explore is almost your own homegrown stuff, which I'm really pumped to see. And just for everyone's, I haven't seen it yet, so you're gonna get to see some real reactions. We actually launched an MCP recently, so people can now ask questions in Claude Code.
What is MCP? Explain to people what MCP is.
So MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. It's essentially a new protocol developed as an open source capability by the folks at Anthropic that enables different systems and different systems of agents to communicate with each other. So you can sort of think of it like an API, but for agents in a way, it designed in a way where there's an easier transfer of context between these agents. And so what that means in like practical terms would be, I can be in my Claude chat or my Claude Cowork instance, and I can say, go and pull me this information from Metaview, and then like let me work on top of that within my Claude Cowork instance. That's essentially what it enables.
So how does that, when that came out, Sal, how did you think about it in terms of Metaview and how it would benefit the end user?
Really, really great question. So one thing is you don't have to think about that stuff as much as you used to because you can build these things incredibly quickly. So the way we thought about that really, this was not hey, we've got this roadmap planning session and where does MCP fit compared to this, and this. It wasn't like we do that with some things. Like when we launch sourcing, that's an investment. We're going to build the best sourcing product on the planet. Who are we going to have on it? And how long are we willing to spend? All that sort of. MCP was not one of those things. This was oh wow, this is like Claude Cowork has just launched and it's incredible. Really annoying that I can't pull Metaview data into that super intuitively. I have to sort of do a workaround to get it in there. Let's just build on top of this new emergent best practice, this protocol. And so frankly, one of our engineers just did it. So it wasn't, it's not that deep, bro.
We'll show a little bit later, like some ideas for MCP. And specifically with the stuff that I'm working on, and I want your help on like the thing I'm building with MCP and Metaview. So show us what you got so far.
So a few things that our sourcing agent can now do that are pretty incredible. I'm going to show you one to start with, which is we've now connected the sourcing agent to be even better at sourcing from within your conversations. What I mean by that is, if you're you, Nolan, and you've spoken to hundreds of candidates over the course of the last, even like 6 months, you might do a decent job of noting down or even structuring the information you get from that. But sometimes there are little nuggets of information that are beyond your memory and maybe you didn't think were important at the time. Or more importantly, there's information within those conversations that is just not part of your like the public data available on any candidate. And so you have loads of proprietary data, which is everything you've ever spoken to with great candidates about, which you want to leverage. So now in Metaview, what you can do is within the sourcing agent, you can tell it, I don't want you to go and search the web for these people. I either want you to look in my applicant tracking system or actually in my Metaview instance, so in my conversations. And I only want you to find people from within that almost like mini database, my own owned database. And the reason that's really cool is because you can get much more detailed with what you're looking for because you know stuff about these people that, the internet doesn't. So for example, I might say, I want to find AEs who have smashed their targets in the last 12 months. Only show me folks who have surpassed their quota by 110, 120%, please. And so some AEs will list that type of metadata, like how much they surpassed their quota by on their resume. Many won't, but almost certainly you'll have spoken about this if you spoke to AEs in the past. I'm saying I want them in the Bay Area minimum 5 years experience. And so I can now go and tell the agent to go off and discover, but again, only looking at people that are actually spoken to. I'm going to jump over to what that looks like, just because the agent takes a few minutes to actually do it. So just to save people's time, what you'll see is the agent sort of makes its plan. So I'm going to zoom in here just so you can see the reasoning trail. And like, there's so much fun going back through reasoning trails. And we talked a little bit actually a couple of weeks ago, Nolan, about fear of bias of AI. And I would stress, I almost think this is like the strongest antidote to that fear, because you can see the full audit trail, the full thinking trail of the AI. Okay. So the AI says this to itself. The user is looking for AEs who have beaten their quota at 110% or more in the last period. This is a search within their database, within their ATS. Let me first create an ICP. That's an ideal candidate profile. Then search for these candidates. And then look at this. Actually, let me think about this more carefully. The user wants AEs who have been to quota by 110%. This information could be in interview transcripts or scorecard data or Metaview summaries or the resume. So it's starting to sort of piece together, where should I look? And it's almost making its own ranking of like, hey, most likely it's going to be in these areas. So it did that thinking, it put together its document. And then of course, it did a bunch more thinking, and it found me candidates from my database who satisfy this condition. So what you can see here is, because it knows this is the most important thing to me, in its summary of why it's recommended a candidate, it's now included that in the summary. Hey, this candidate achieved 120% of sales targets at WeWork as an inside sales rep. This one exceeded 120% of quota at Salesforce as a sales exec. You can see it's taking, obviously, my requirement. It's using a piece of data that is not on the public web. It's only in my database, and using that as the sort of the insight it needs to surface candidates to me. So this, sourcing from within your conversations or the candidates we've spoken to in the past, essentially, is a new capability that we're super seeing a lot of great feedback on. And one of the things we're really enjoying seeing people make the most of.
And this specifically for me solves the problem of, you have all of this context, you have all of these relationships that you've made. And typically when we start recruiting, we just go straight to LinkedIn and start sourcing. Like, that's historically how it's done. This now gives us the opportunity to go through our database, to go through the conversations that we've had, and to start there first, because typically those relationships are already warm. Is that right?
Exactly. And again, importantly, things that there's another recruiter out there who's looking for that person, and he or she doesn't know actually that recruiter's ability to differentiate hot AE who smashed quota, most recently, from one who looks just as good on paper, but actually turns out, only hit 80% in their last year. Like, that they might know it too, but if they don't have access to the tools, their tools have no way of knowing it. And so you're leveraging all the information at your disposal to just get to the right candidate more quickly.
All right. You want me to
I've got a few
show
other
mine
things
now?
to share as well, but I'm happy to go one for one if you want to.
Yeah, let's do one for one. I'll show you mine. And this will be Sile giving me feedback on this too, because it's the first time anyone has seen it other than me. So let me start with the problem. So I'm doing executive search, and when I meet with a hiring manager every single week, and in that meeting, what I do is I show the process and what I've been doing for the last week. And then in addition to that, I'm also having like a log of all of the conversations that we've had. And so with the log, it's important for me to make sure that the history of what we've discussed is always in my doc. But then if it's in a doc, then I'm pulling stuff over from the ATS. And so I'm living with like 5 different things, which can be a pain in the ass. And so what I'm trying to do is centralize this thing. And my reasoning behind this was, step 1, let me just see if I can visualize something that makes sense. And then step 2, figure out how to go build it. So this is step 1. So this took me, I'm not even kidding, 45 minutes maximum in Claude Code, which is so wild because I am the most non-technical person of all time. So let me share my screen and show you what's going on. Let me just start at the top here, which this is the pipeline view of what I want to show the hiring manager every week of who is active right now, right? And so basically what we have active right now is we have an on-site tab, we have the hiring manager call, we have like the warm-up discuss. There should be like a Nolan one here, which I've been talking to it about this morning. And then we have everything that's like past, not a fit, back burner candidates, that sort of a thing. So this is the dashboard that we should lead off the conversation with so we can action people. For some of these people, we need to figure out what is the on-site panel. So that stuff is actually input in here to be clear of like, we can have discussions on what's going on with each of these candidates. The next thing is the weekly log. So again, still cooking with this thing. But what I ultimately want here is the history to be able to go down and talk about every single thing that we have discussed. What I tell people is like that one of my biggest pet peeves is revisionist history. Revisionist history drives me insane. And that means like with a hiring manager, I'm sure you guys have experienced this. We talk about something, we agree on something, and then all of a sudden, 3-4 weeks from now, we misremember the thing we talked about. And so this is where I like having it here is all super, super critical to me. Last couple of things is like we put the interview loop in here so there's no questions, and then also the job description. So what I want to do from this is I want to take this view and then ultimately go build it to where it automates every week before my discussion with the hiring manager. And then also have the ability to have this be living and breathing. So instead of me like working in a doc over here and working in the ATS over here, I'm starting to just work in here because maybe I don't, for my small use case of 3 to 5 roles at a time, maybe I don't need an ATS, which is currently what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So Sal, what's your feedback?
Yeah, love it. I think for your, there's so much, maybe I'm talking about at the strategy level almost to start with. I see this frankly, in even in my world, you have to over-engineer things for like the largest companies and custom companies of your product in some ways. Whereas frankly, folks like you who can have a much more, you have a much more high touch relationship with your clients. You are obviously an expert of your craft yourself as well. You're not sort of having to have a piece of software that's like foolproof and dummy proof that people who, you just hired fresh out of college are going to be using and need to sort of, then it's like the hand holding version. So I think this type of thing just makes so much sense for, frankly, for like expert practitioners like yourself to build this for your own benefit, but also as part of almost your work product for your customers, which sounds like it's a key part of it. You are sharing this with your clients to be like, this is where we're going to do our collaboration. And it's like part of what you're offering. And so I think it's a really, what are they, when they're deciding to work with Mafia talent, are they deciding to work just with Nolan? No, not really, actually. It's like, it's also Nolan's stack and your ability to create and orchestrate this stack.
And this is how it would work, right? So like when I'm pitching clients, I could just show them like, this is what you're going to get. This is how we're going to work. This is why I do it the way that I do it. And so to your point, exactly. So my next style on this was like, step 1 was like brainstorm, get my feet wet with Claude Code, which kind of felt like a magical experience. Like I've never coded in my life. I think I took like a online Stanford coding class when I was like a junior in college because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life and very quickly realized that was not going to be my path. Now it's like, okay, I got to go build this thing. So I'm going to try and pull the thread as far as I can by myself. But this is what this whole world is enabled. Is even if I hit a roadblock, I can hit up friends. I can pay for somebody who's like not super expensive to like come do this. Before this would have cost me, hours being like the lowest denominator to think about this, like days, months, even to render this. Like I've been in Figma before. I can't operate Figma. Like Figma like stretches my brain on like how I get these things. This took 45 minutes and now I have something that's living and breathing that I could show somebody for what the output that I want is.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the world about will everyone just build all their own software and actually companies like Metaview are totally screwed? Or is like, where do you draw those lines? Now, obviously, I don't believe that's going to happen. What I do believe is that people like you, people in your situation have been underserved by the market to date. You've had the choice of buy some recruiting specific software that's built for bigger companies than mine that is like eye-rolly to use, or maybe like, hey, just make the best of Notion and make my own template and maybe that would be fine. And like both, they underserve you on different sides. And now you can, because this is a core part of your work product, you can go and build this. Whereas if you're, I don't know, name your sort of like 1,000 person tech company, actually it's not your core competency to have some recruiting software, but equally recruiting is really important to you. You want world-class engineers and product builders to be thinking about how to build this in a way that works for you when you're hiring at scale. And then I think there is the world where, vibe coding your own version of that within your company doesn't make sense because you'll run the risk of having a system that's worse than your neighbors. And it's not a risk worth taking. So I think this like makes total sense for you. And obviously just even just what you put together seems like it'd be pretty valuable as well. So yeah. Okay, let me jump over back to the sourcing. We're working a lot on the sourcing agent. We have been exploring and building additional capabilities for the agent around, the real corners, not even the corners, the things that separate great, like highly informed recruiters from people who are just LinkedIn scrollers. And one of the big things that we heard again and again is, yeah, sure, when I'm using like LinkedIn or name your other sort of like sourcing tool, I can tell it, look at people who are in these companies. But actually, person at Google in 1999 is very different to someone who's at Google in, 2019, right? The vintage really matters. And so now we've been working on the sourcing agent to really understand these vintages far more effectively. And so you'll see I've done like a bit of a basic example here. I've asked the agent, find me candidates that worked at Stripe, Figma, Plaid, or Robinhood in design during their growth period based in the Bay Area. So I haven't been very specific. I said during their growth period. I'm not smart enough to know exactly when their growth periods were. I don't have the time to go and figure it out. I reckon Metaview might, or Metaview sourcing agent might. Yeah, so here you go. It did like a bit of thinking, and then you see, I'll start by using the sourcing workflow. So it's choosing which tool to use and doing calibration first, since there's no comprehensive job description because I hardly told it anything. And I'm going to map out the growth periods for each company. Stripe peaked around 2014 to 2020, Figma from 2017 to 2022, Plaid 2018. You see, so it's actually sort of, I'm not saying it's right all the time, by the way, but what I'm saying is, I can go and correct it if I want to, of course. That's the great thing about working with this AI. So I know exactly what it was thinking and I can tell it you're right on. But the point is, I can just say during the growth period, go and have a look. And so it is now using it used that knowledge, and you'll see it sort of canonize this into its ideal candidate profile, which is this shared source of truth you have for who you're hiring. And you'll see it said, therefore my must-haves are they had to be at Stripe either during this period, Figma this period, so on and so on. So you can get to this vintages like programmed into your sourcing agent just incredibly quickly because you can just speak in natural language and it will go and do the research it needs to do. And you can say whatever you want. Any information that's available on the web. You could say, I want to hire people who were at Stripe just before their Series A. Okay, I'm going to go and look up where their Series A was. That means this bit. I'm going to, it's a massive, like all of these almost like finer tuned type of sourcing that you'd love to do. You can now, if you had all the time in the world that you do yourself, you sort of don't have to worry about not having the time because Metaview sourcing agent sort of gets that stuff now. And so look, what it's doing now is it's working on it. It's going to present them to me shortly. It says, okay, now let me launch parallel searches across all 4 target companies. So what it does now is it spins up 4 sub agents for each of these 4 companies to go and do the work. So it's like, yeah, we've started to move to this agent sub agent architecture. So it's just better for it's better for speed. Actually, the main thing it's better for, funny enough, is accuracy, because essentially it means you can go and get this larger pool of candidates and then have the main agent decide which ones to present. It might not do a great job in this case because I haven't given it a lot of data about what's the most important to me. But the fact is it's running all 4 of these searches in parallel and based on these vintages. So main thing I want to show is the vintages, the fact that you can now like have these much sort of looser definitions.
That's cool. I remember how many times I've tried to source and a hiring manager saying like, it's always like a hiring manager smartass comment, which is like, well, I want somebody from Series B at this company during this time period. I'm like, well, that's not a checkbox in LinkedIn that I can click. And so now basically what you're able to do is take that data set and really start to filter it based off of like these unique and bespoke use cases.
Yeah, exactly. One last stuff thing I want to show you, and then I think we'll have to hop is you'll have seen through a lot of this, that the sort of the central thing that me and this AI are collaborating on is the ideal candidate profile. It's how do we align on what is it that we're looking for? So what we've been thinking is, well, what else do I use that ideal candidate profile for? Now, in reality, I would argue, Nolan, that your main job in the work that you do with your clients is to have as tuned an understanding as possible of what you're actually looking for. Whether you can articulate it or not, you personally, is sort of a different question. But that's what makes you a great recruiter. And the recs you work on are always going to be like headhunted people. And so sourcing for you is totally fine. Of course, if you're hiring at scale, actually, this same collaboration that I've had with the AI to say, well, this is what good looks like. I want that same logic to be applied to my other pipelines as well. If I have a referral pipeline or if I have an inbound pipeline, it's the same thing. It's like, just like it would be the same recruiter doing it because we want the information in their head. It's actually going to be the same agent doing it. So now what we're launching very soon is the ability to use this same ICP, so this same description of what good looks like, to run over your applicants as well. So essentially, it will take this same document. You've done all this work to get the AI familiar with what good looks like for sourcing. It will then say to you, hey, I've used this same ICP. You can see it is here. It's the ICP. I can edit it if I want to. But now it's actually going through my list of applicants and letting me know how these applicants fit against that same ICP you said you were sourcing for. And so this is where I think one of the things we may have actually not talked about it on the pod, but we definitely talked about it just based on some LinkedIn like noise that was going around, hey, like, these like recruiting AI companies, they're cooked because you can do whatever you want with co-work. You can do amazing things with co-work. Nolan, you've just showed us some really amazing things that you can do with co-work, and you should do that. And Metaview has an MCP, so you can do that with Metaview data as well. That's like great. We want that future to exist. But when you start to think about like multiple dozens, maybe hundreds of people trying to use the same system to work essentially towards the same goal, and B, having the cohesion between all of these different, in this case, pipelines of candidates, but you want the same sort of like logic and intelligence to be applied while also being compliant and, consistent and auditable and all those things. That's when you get into this it's really clear then that you're going to have a single system that is indeed like designed, hopefully by some smart humans, to sort of like really push up against the current workflow and then bring it to an AI native workflow over time. The application review product is really great. Maybe we'll do another session on that another time. The main thing I want to show here though is this ICP is like, this is what primary work product is, I think, as a recruitment person now, is engineer the context such that the AI understands what we're looking for just as well as I do, and then use that context in any part of the workflow where it makes sense. And that sort of inherently lends itself towards this platform approach, which is obviously the approach we're taking. So yeah, we're cooking on this front as well.
Yeah. And the idea here is like you're using that context to render what will ultimately be like highly viable candidates. So instead of the chronological applicant tracking system historically, now it's like, this is the model that we want you to look at and then render the people who will ultimately be of use to us.
Yep, exactly.
Sick. All right. Show us what you're cooking on, because this is how people learn. Sal and I are going to do this like every 4 to 6 weeks. It'll also hold us accountable to keep building new shit. So Sal, thanks for the time, brother.
Thanks, man. Catch you later.